If we want to understand where AI is headed, where the big money is really going, we're not going to look to the future. Nope. We're going to look to the past. And I mean way back.
Because it turns out that if you really want to know what's next for giants like Google and Microsoft, well, we've got to talk about the 17th century spice trade. Yeah, I know, it sounds a little crazy. Spices? But stick with me here, because the playbook they wrote back then, it's almost identical to what's happening today.
So, this playbook, it was basically perfected all the way back in 1602. And it created a kind of company so powerful, so dominant, that its ghost is basically haunting the server farms of Silicon Valley right now. So let me introduce you to the Dutch East India Company. They called it the VOC. Now, you might have heard of it as the first company to ever sell stock to the public, which is true. But honestly, that's the least interesting thing about it. This company was basically a state within a state. I mean, it could literally wage war, sign treaties with foreign leaders, all to corner the market on global trade.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Just look at the parallels here. Back then, the VOC got its monopoly power from a government charter, a piece of paper. Today, tech giants get it from network effects. Everyone's on their platform, so where else are you going to go? The VOC needed a ton of cash for ships and long, dangerous voyages. Today's hyperscalers need billions for massive GPU clusters. And get this, just like the VOC, these big tech companies are now so powerful they're negotiating with entire countries like they're equals. It is the exact same pattern. We've just swapped out spices for data.
And, this isn't just a quirky one-off comparison. It's a pattern, a cycle. As we're about to see, history shows us that every single time a game-changing new technology comes along, this exact same cycle of a few players taking over, it happens again and again. This timeline just lays it out so clearly. You see the cycle, right? In the 1600s, it was about controlling global trade. Then in the 1800s, it was railroads and oil, the physical infrastructure of the world. Then came the phone companies, controlling communication. And then, of course, the internet platforms, consolidating all of our data and our attention. Each time, a handful of giants rise up and take control. And each time, eventually, society has to step in and basically hit a giant reset button by writing new rules. But today, the prize isn't land or oil or even data. It's intelligence itself, cognitive infrastructure. Okay, so that brings us right back to today. And you're probably thinking, all right, I get it, we've seen this movie before. But here's the crucial question. Why is this time different? And believe me, it is different. It all comes down to two things: a staggering amount of capital and an unbelievable cost to even play the game. First, let's just talk about the scale of the money involved. We are talking about a $1 trillion investment in AI infrastructure by just a handful of companies. To put that in perspective for you, that's like a few private companies deciding to build out the entire electrical grid for the planet. That's the scale we're on. And second, there's the cost just to compete. It's becoming absolutely astronomical. Projections show that by 2026, just one single training run for a cutting-edge AI model could set you back $10 billion. That's not a barrier to entry, that's a sheer unclimbable cliff face. So what's the result of all this? Well, it creates this incredible gravitational pull. With costs this insane, pretty much everyone else, I'm talking brilliant startups, top university researchers, everyone, they're basically forced to become vassals in this new kingdom. They have to build their innovations on top of the platforms owned by the giants, paying to use their tools and their cloud. So, when you take that historical pattern we talked about, and you combine it with this completely unprecedented scale, well, the analysis points to three possible endgames for AI, three potential futures. And the thing is, we are choosing which one we get right now with the decisions we're making. Okay, so the first scenario A, is basically the path we're on by default. You can think of it as a new kind of digital feudalism. The AI giants become the new landlords of intelligence. And every other business, whether you're a hospital, a law firm, a movie studio, you end up paying rent to them through API fees just to access the basic cognitive tools you need to operate. Now, a second possibility is that the whole thing comes crashing down. The massive AI investment bubble pops. But here's the paradox. A crash might actually make things worse. The survivors, the companies with the absolute deepest pockets, they'll just swoop in and buy up all the valuable infrastructure and talent for pennies on the dollar, and they'd emerge from the chaos with an even stronger monopoly. Then there's scenario C,
This one is sometimes called the AT&T moment, harkening back to the breakup of the telephone monopoly. This is the future where we, as a society, decide that artificial intelligence is just too important, too fundamental to be left in the hands of a few private companies. And so we regulate the core infrastructure, the raw computing power, like a public utility, like water or electricity, to make sure everyone has fair access. So let's just go back to that default path for a second, that neo-feudal world. This table really spells out the stakes in black and white. You can see the likely winners and losers pretty clearly. The winners? The hyperscalers, the ones who own the entire stack from the silicon chips all the way up to the cloud. And the losers? Well, that could be mid-sized businesses who become totally dependent on them, a lot of knowledge workers whose jobs get digitized, and even entire countries who could become, in effect, digital colonies.
But, and this is probably the most important takeaway from all of this, none of these outcomes are set in stone. This isn't inevitable. The future is not some movie script that's already been written for us. There's a quote in the source material that just hits the nail on the head. The technology is inevitable. The sociology is a choice. I love that. The tech itself, the advancement of AI, that's probably going to happen no matter what. But the sociology, how we choose to weave it into our lives, our economies, our societies, that part is 100% our choice. And just like our ancestors rewrote the rules to do things like end child labor or break up the giant oil trusts, the analysis lays out a potential blueprint for us today. It involves things like regulating the choke points, making sure cloud providers can't unfairly favor their own AI services. It means creating a public option, maybe funding open source AI in a public cloud so there's real competition. It even suggests rethinking our tax system, maybe taxing automation more and labor less. And finally, demanding total transparency so we can all see and audit the values and biases baked into these systems. And all of that leaves us with what might be the single defining question for our generation. The folks before us, they had to write the rules for the internet. Now it's our turn to write the rules for intelligence itself. We've seen what history tells us happens when a few entities get too much control. We have the blueprint. The only question left is what kind of future will we choose to write?